The brochure versus the bailiffs. Right then, we've all seen the brochures. The rolling hills of the Cotswolds, the fancy London skylines, and the dream of a quiet life in a seaside town where the seagulls only steal half your chips. But behind the postcards, there's a bit of a mass exodus happening. People are packing their bags, binning their local loyalty, and sprinting away from certain UK cities like they've just seen a price increase notification from British Gas. Today we're looking at the 10 cities in the UK that people are leaving in droves. We're talking soaring rents, vanishing jobs, and even the literal threat of being underwater. Before we dive into the gloom and doom, do me a massive favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. It's free, it helps the channel, and unlike a mortgage in London, it won't leave you weeping into a bowl of unbranded cornflakes. All set? Nice one. Let's get the ball rolling, shall we? Here are the 10 cities everyone is ditching in 2026. Luton, the world's largest departure lounge. We start our journey in Bedfordshire with Luton. If you've ever been, you'll know it's basically an airport with a few houses attached to it, and for years it was the budget choice for London commuters. But as we head into 2026, the data is looking increasingly brutal, showing a net migration drop of 39%. It's a city that's currently suffering from a massive identity crisis. People moved here because it was a cheap backdoor into the capital. But that door has been slammed shut by a housing market where the average mortgage now hits £1,260 a month. When you're paying that kind of money to live in a town where the most exciting landmark is a departure lounge for a budget airline, you eventually realize you might as well just use the runway and never come back. The town centre is struggling with a 14% vacancy rate, and the local council is scrambling to fill budget gaps by hiking council tax. It's a bit of a tragic irony that a place famous for making hats for the world is now mostly famous for being the place where everyone is putting their hats on and heading for the exit. Portsmouth, property hunting with a snorkel. Heading down to the south coast, we find Portsmouth. On paper, being the UK's only island city sounds quite exotic. But the reality is starting to feel a bit more like a rainy version of Waterworld. Portsmouth is one of the most densely populated cities in the country, and in 2026, that density is meeting a climate exposure wall. Because the city is so low-lying, it's one of the most vulnerable spots in the country for surface water flooding. And migration is down 30% because people are tired of their insurance premiums rising faster than the Solent. There's a sinking feeling that comes with living here. While the naval history is world-class, having the ocean trying to move into your hallway every time there's a high tide is less than ideal. Add to that the fact that one accident on the M275 can trap the entire population in a car-based purgatory, and you see why families are trading their sea views for the higher, drier ground of the South Downs. Hull, life at the end of the universe. Further north, we hit Hull, a city that famously has its own telephone system and a very unique way of doing things. But independence only gets you so far when you're living in a geographical cul-de-sac. Hull saw a 24% drop in migration recently because, quite frankly, it's at the end of a very long road. Unless you're catching a ferry to Rotterdam, you don't really pass through Hull, which makes it a nightmare for attracting the kind of modern tech investment that's currently propping up places like Leeds. While it remains one of the cheapest places to buy a house in the UK, the local consequences of this isolation are showing in the job market, which is still heavily anchored to traditional manufacturing. It's a city of immense pride, but in 2026, pride doesn't pay for a train ticket to a better-paying job elsewhere. The white telephone boxes are iconic, but these days they're mostly used by people calling a removals van to take them to the other side of the Humber Bridge. Bradford, the great northern brain drain. Moving into West Yorkshire, we have to talk about Bradford. Just a stone's throw from Leeds, Bradford is suffering from a brain drain of epic proportions. It has one of the youngest populations in Europe, yet it's losing over 5,600 people a year to internal migration. The problem is that Bradford has become a shadow city. Everyone with a degree or high-paying ambition is hopping on the bus to Leeds the moment they graduate. This leaves the city in a hollowed-out state where the rents are dirt cheap, averaging about £676, but the local economy is struggling to breathe because the disposable income is being spent in the shiny malls of its neighbour. It's a city with grand Victorian architecture that once housed more millionaires per capita than London. But today those mills are being converted into flats for people who are already browsing the internet for a way out. It's become the ultimate starter city where you live, while you save enough money to live literally anywhere else. Coventry, concrete dreams and ring road nightmares. In the heart of the West Midlands, Coventry is seeing a 21% decrease in migration, and the reason is a phenomenon called studentification. The city centre has essentially become a forest of purpose-built student blocks, which is great if you're 19 and enjoy communal kitchens, but it's driving families and long-term professionals out toward Warwick. This has created a sense of post-industrial fatigue, where the traditional automotive heritage is being replaced by temporary academic residents who leave every summer. People want a community, not just a campus, and the local consequences of this shift are visible in the vanishing independent shops and rising rents. By the time you navigate the infamously confusing Ring Road for the 10th time in a week, you start to understand why the population is thinning out. Legend says the Ring Road was built for the car of the future, but the future turned out to be a lot of grey, concrete and a very fast exit route. Leicester, the Freddo economic crisis. Not far away is Leicester, which is currently facing a disposable income crisis. Latest data shows that Leicester has some of the lowest levels of fun money in the country. After you've paid for your rent, which has spiked across the Midlands, and your energy bills, you're left with almost nothing. Migration here is down 30% because the city has become an affordability trap. You work hard, you live in a vibrant, diverse city with incredible food, but you're constantly checking your banking app with one eye shut. Even the global fame of finding King Richard III under a car park couldn't fix the underlying economic claustrophobia. People are deciding that if they're going to be skint, they might as well be skint in a town where the air is fresher and the council isn't constantly on the edge of a fiscal breakdown. Oxford, dreaming spires and nightmare rents. That brings us to Oxford, the city of dreaming spires and nightmare rents. Oxford is a warning of what happens when a city becomes a museum for the elite. It's currently the most unaffordable city in the UK relative to wages, with a house price to income ratio of nearly 13:1. Unless you're a tenured professor or a time-traveling billionaire, buying a house here is a pipe dream. Migration is down 20% because the people who actually make the city work, the nurses, the bus drivers, the teachers, have realised they can no longer afford to live in the city they serve. They're fleeing for Bristol or heading north, where you can buy a whole house for the price of an Oxford garden shed. Plus, the city sits in a geographical basin that traps air pollution, meaning you're paying a premium to breathe in 18th century charm and 21st century bus fumes. Birmingham, the bankruptcy blues. Entering the top 3 is the second city, Birmingham. The migration stats here are genuinely shocking. Over 79,500 people left last year, a net loss of over 16,000. The exodus is being driven by bankruptcy blues after the council effectively went bust, leading to a 21% hike in council tax and massive cuts to libraries and youth centres. People are looking at the bill for the council's mistakes and deciding to take their chances elsewhere. Birmingham famously has more canals than Venice, but right now those canals are mostly being used as a scenic route for people moving their furniture to the suburbs. It's a city with a massive amount of talent that is currently being squeezed by a fiscal crisis it simply didn't ask for. London, the luxury ghost town. At number 2, we have to talk about the great hollow-out of London's inner boroughs, like Westminster and Newham. London is losing nearly 130,000 domestic residents a year. In 2026, the average mortgage in Westminster is hitting over £4,300 a month, which isn't a housing cost, it's a ransom. With over 60% of workers now on hybrid schedules, the London premium just doesn't make sense anymore. Why pay £3 a month for a view of a brick wall in Zone 2 when you can live in a Zoom town in Yorkshire with a garden and a local pub that doesn't charge £9 for a pint? The city is becoming a luxury ghost town, where the lights are on, but nobody's home because they're all working from a conservatory in the north. The number one spot: death of the big city. Finally, our number one isn't a single city, but the urban monolith itself. For the first time in a generation, the fastest growing spots in the UK aren't cities. They're secondary towns like Wigan and Mansfield. These places are seeing migration increases of up to 27%, because they offer the one thing our major cities have lost: a chance at a normal life. The UK is decentralising as we flee the bankrupt councils, the rising tides, and the 12-to-1 rent ratios of our major hubs in favour of 15-minute towns, where you can actually afford to breathe. The "don't move here" warning isn't just about a few bad postcodes. It's a sign that the old way of living in Britain is officially being binned. Thanks for watching. Before you go, if money was no object, which city in the UK would you actually want to live in? Or have you given up on cities entirely? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see the top 10 UK towns people are actually rushing to you, let me know and I'll get on it. See you in the next one.